As the days slipped into weeks, what had started as a carefully calculated arrangement began to twist into something neither of them fully understood. At first, it was easy to keep the boundaries clear. She would hold his hand in hallways, flash her mischievous smile at anyone watching, and lean against him with practiced ease whenever her parents were near, while he would play his part with the precision of someone who had rehearsed every move in his head. But the longer they performed, the more the performance seemed to bleed into reality. There were the accidental glances that lingered a fraction too long, the laughter that came unscripted when he caught her making fun of someone under her breath, the way her guard slipped when she talked about how suffocating her home felt, and the way he found himself wanting to protect her even when no one else was around to witness the act. She told herself she was only humoring him, that his steady presence was just a convenient shield, but deep down she felt the pull of something different, something safer, quieter, and infinitely more genuine than the thrill she chased with the boy who had her heart tangled in dangerous knots. The bad boy still occupied her nights, still held her attention with his reckless charm and the kind of kisses that tasted like rebellion, but she began to notice the cracks she had once refused to see. He missed their meetings more often, made excuses that sounded thinner with each passing day, and his temper flared in ways that left her unsettled. Still, she clung to him because he symbolized freedom, because choosing him was an act of defiance against everything her parents wanted, and because letting him go felt like surrendering to the world she despised. Yet every time she returned from those stolen encounters and found herself back in the company of the nerd she had hired, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was safer in the lie than in the truth. The revelation came like a storm she never saw coming, sudden and merciless. She overheard pieces of it at first, whispers in corridors, half-conversations abruptly cut off when she entered, warnings from people who never dared confront her directly. But eventually the truth clawed its way to the surface, undeniable and sharp. The boy she had risked everything for, the one she thought represented freedom, carried with him a past darker than she had ever imagined. It wasn't just rumors of fights or brushes with authority, things she had once found exciting. It was stories of real harm, choices made that left scars on others, debts owed that could never be repaid. When the details finally reached her in full, it felt like the floor beneath her had given way. He wasn't just reckless, he was destructive, not just to himself but to anyone foolish enough to be close to him. And suddenly all the defiance that had fueled her pursuit felt hollow, because the rebellion she thought she was embracing had teeth that could tear her apart. The moment of decision did not arrive with fireworks or applause. It crept in quietly, woven into the ordinary rhythm of her days until she could no longer deny that the weight on her chest was her own refusal to choose. She wandered the familiar hallways of her school, sat through dinner at her parents' sprawling table, and endured the endless buzz of gossip from friends who thought they knew her story better than she did, all while the truth pressed against her ribs like a secret desperate to be let out. Her parents had started to relax, their sharp suspicions softening as they watched her fake relationship continue with the nerd they approved of, their voices dripping with a pride she did not feel. They thought she was finally maturing, finally bending into the mold they had carved for her, while in reality she was still sneaking out to meet the boy who had once embodied her rebellion. But each time she met him now, something inside her felt colder, the shimmer of excitement dulled by the knowledge of what he carried behind his smirk. His past was no longer rumor but fact, a past heavy with mistakes he didn't regret and choices that revealed a darkness she had been too blinded to see. The thrill that once drew her felt tainted, like biting into fruit that looked ripe but was rotten at the core, and yet she couldn't bring herself to cut him off completely. He represented a version of herself she wasn't ready to abandon, the reckless fighter who had refused to bow to the suffocating expectations of her wealthy world. Walking away from him felt like admitting her parents had been right all along, and that thought filled her with rage. But then there was the other boy, the one she had paid to be her shield, who had stepped into her chaos without asking for more than she promised, and who somehow became the steady heartbeat beneath the noise of her life. With him she found herself laughing without meaning to, sharing pieces of herself she had never spoken aloud before, confessions about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who only wanted a version of her that shined for their benefit. He listened without judgment, never trying to fix her but always grounding her when she spun too far into self-destruction. He was the safe place she had never known she craved, and the terrifying part was how easy it became to imagine staying in that safety forever. Yet the thought also frightened her, because real love was not like rebellion, it demanded trust, honesty, vulnerability. It was easier to play pretend, to hide behind sarcasm and reckless choices, than to admit she wanted something that required her to strip down the armor she had built her entire life around. The conflict between them reached its breaking point one evening when he, the nerd who had once sworn to keep his emotions separate, finally cracked under the weight of his own feelings. He told her he couldn't keep pretending, not when every moment they shared felt real to him in ways She had always been the kind of girl who drew eyes the moment she entered a room, not because she wanted attention but because everything about her radiated defiance against the polished world she had been born into. The daughter of wealthy parents who measured worth in money and status, she had grown up surrounded by grand chandeliers, imported cars, and private parties where champagne flowed more freely than water. Yet for all the glitter around her, she carried herself with the restless energy of someone who wanted to smash glass ceilings just for the thrill of hearing them shatter. Teachers called her unteachable, her parents called her ungrateful, and her friends, at least the few she trusted, called her fearless. But what she really was, deep down, was tired of being told who to be. That exhaustion translated into rebellion, a rebellion painted across her clothes, her sharp words, and her reckless decisions, the latest of which involved chasing after a boy who was everything her parents feared. He was the kind of boy with smudged knuckles and a past whispered about in school hallways, the one with the smirk that promised danger and the charm that pulled her closer every time logic told her to walk away. He represented freedom to her, or at least the illusion of it, because when she looked at him she saw someone who had no interest in following rules, and that was intoxicating. But the problem was that everyone knew her parents were watching her like hawks, terrified she would embarrass them in front of their carefully cultivated social circle, and they had already warned her that if she was ever caught with someone like him, there would be consequences she couldn't ignore. So she hatched a plan, reckless and clever in equal measure, to distract the world from where her heart truly lingered. That was when the idea of hiring him came to life, him, the one person no one would ever suspect she had any interest in, the one person whose very existence seemed to sit at the opposite pole of her own. He was the straight-laced nerd, the kind of boy who wore crisp shirts and carried a backpack weighed down by textbooks instead of secrets, the kind who raised his hand in class not to impress but because he actually cared about the answers. His life was neat, his grades spotless, his reputation so squeaky clean it practically gleamed, and though she had never spared him much thought beyond a few sarcastic comments, she realized he was perfect for the role she needed filled. If she appeared to be dating someone like him, her parents would sigh with relief, her classmates would gossip about the absurdity of the pairing, and no one would ever think to look twice when she slipped away to be with the boy who made her pulse race. It was flawless in theory, a masquerade designed to protect her real desires while keeping her reputation safe. All she had to do was convince him. Of course, convincing him was no easy task, because he wasn't the kind of person who